welcome to Healing from the Past and Depression. This is part one. And this part, we're going to be focusing is your glass half full or half empty? It's all about perspective. Self concept. This all starts with your self concept. How do you view yourself? Do you have high or low self esteem? And if so, are you aware of this personally? And about practical improvement. Have you accepted yourself of your weaknesses and of your strengths? And are you willing to put in the effort that it takes to make these improvements about yourself? That is, if you do feel or you have identified that yes, you do have a few weak spots, but yes, you are willing to perfect those for yourself, not for anybody else's benefit, but strictly first of all, it begins with you first before you can multiply that into other people and their perspective of you. And as well as affirmation, do you affirm yourself daily? What do you think about yourself? Are you secure within yourself, or do you build up fortified walls or barriers to stop people from getting close to you? And comparison, are you a person who constantly compares themselves? Are you very critique and harshly criticize yourself? Are there reasons for certain behaviors or actions? Because when it comes to taking control of the circumstances of life, these are questions that one needs to be sincere with themselves, but it all begins with your self concept. Past trauma. Usually, when we look at our glass as being half full when it comes to dealing with depression and tackling the circumstances of life, this could be due to past trauma that could have happened in the past and possibly be a trigger. This can be post traumatic stress disorder, a particular event or life event that happened in your past could have been a trigger to past trauma. This could also be acceptance with your past. How well have you accepted with what happened in the past? Are you content with it, or have you adapted behaviors to kind of submerge and to cover up what happened? And as a result, how has this escalated and how has this affected your mental health and your capability of handling the circumstances of your life? So going back and linking to self-concept, have you decided what type of therapy works out for you? Because when it comes to dealing with post-traumatic disorder, when it comes to your perception of yourself, maybe you have, if you think you have low self-esteem, maybe you could specialize in person-centered theory. So you need to sit down when it comes to dealing with the trauma, because we need to heal from our past. We need to heal from our past and move on from depression. This all begins with knowing who you are first, knowing the perception that you have of yourself, and acknowledging that, you know what, maybe I could do with a little bit of improvement to better myself. So you need to identify what type of therapy works out best for you. And to avoid carrying over, you need to avoid displacement, because oftentimes you could be deep down in your subconscious or your unconscious unknowingly, you could be upset at a particular life event. You could be angry about something, but then you could be even feel low self-esteem. It could be a trigger, it could be a word, it could be whatever is causing you to feel this, but you're displacing that. It could be to your spouse, you could be displacing that onto your job, you could be displacing that to other people or into other areas to avoid dealing with the root cause of the problem. So triggers, as I mentioned before, you need to know your triggers, because friends can really influence you. Who are the friends that you hang around with? I mean, show me your friends, what you read. I'll show you in 5 years' time, where you might possibly end up. So we need to learn how to evolve without totally discarding people. It's good to evolve, but sometimes, you can have people that tie you down to a certain level, and then it's what society, I don't know, they call it keeping it real. You can humble yourself, but by all means, your life is yours and yours alone. Nobody can live it for you. Your parents cannot live it for you. Your friends can certainly not live it for you. So when it comes to tackling the circumstances of life, you need to make an assessment. And if there's one thing that anybody has taken from this COVID-19 or pandemic, is that you should have now learned the people who truly care for you and your well-being, or adapted a sense of appreciation of life and those who are meaningful towards you. So certain behaviors, what are your coping mechanisms? Do you tend to engage in a certain unhealthy behavior? Perhaps you drink or take drugs or smoke, whatever type of unhealthy behavior. So you need to learn these certain triggers so that you can start effectively narrowing down what you can control, what you can change, and start taking control of the circumstances of life. And as well, sometimes maybe you could be what some people call like you're too submissive. Now, sometimes you need to reflect back, as I mentioned, what happened in your past. Because oftentimes, if a person is too submissive when it comes to healing with the past, it just could be a type of coping mechanism where you've become passive and submissive as a way of adapting for survival. So most cases when most people have experienced, domestic abuse, or they've been, sexually abused like in the past, it just becomes a normal way of life. It just becomes your norm where you have actually adapted and blended, like a chameleon because it's a survival instinct. So sometimes this can come with overreacting as opposed to responding effectively. If you listened to the previous audio on healing from past part one, or the power of words, we sort of cover this in terms of emotional and logical reasoning. We sort of cover over reacting versus responding. Spiritual detox, as much as when it comes to healing from the past, knowing your self concept, identifying your triggers, and doing a practical assessment of the behaviors and the unhealthy patterns that you might have adapted as a coping mechanism, you need to spiritually detox. I know we've all heard about green tea, flat tummies, being sold online or on Instagram, but sometimes we need to spiritually detox. And I mean, some people, who, I don't know, maybe it could be you personally. I mean, no offense, but see themselves as a health guru. They're talking about eating healthy, eating organic food. I mean, they take so much care, of their physical body. But what about spiritually? You know? Because sometimes we need to spiritually detox. I mean, we do this to break yokes or curses because sometimes, it depends on the atmosphere that you're in. If you're a very sensitive person when it comes to atmospheres, you need to spiritually detox. And this can be done through going on a fast, on an intermediate fast, through meditation, going to a spa. But whatever you need to do, as much as you take that green tea to detox your physical body, you need to detox spiritually to release negative energy so that you can have that peace. And sometimes some of this, when it comes to depression, another area that people tend to overlook, and you can have a listen to this sermon on the website, is when it comes to soul ties. When you engage in sexual activity, it could be with somebody, who you might not be married to, or just, yeah, if you're engaging in a sexual activity with somebody you're not married to, you're engaging in a covenant. And an often part that people, yeah, I mean, come on, emotional and logical reasoning, yes, of course, it might have felt good at that moment, but sometimes people tend to overlook the consequences of that when you're equally joining your soul and your mind to somebody else, and you don't know what type of yokes, what type of bondages, what type of mental baggage, they're all floating on you. So a spiritual detox is often overlooked, but this is very much needed to fully heal and get that peace within your heart that surpasses all human understanding, because you need to start protecting your atmosphere. This could be with certain people, certain people that just, talk anyhow. You can allow anybody into your personal space. So practicability, maybe engage on a form of spiritual detox and try and focus your thoughts on the future as much as you protect your atmosphere and what type of energy is being transferred. You need to focus your thoughts and meditate on the future, because there's nothing worse than being stuck, or your mind being stuck in the past, because each day they keep moving, they keep rolling. But if your mind is stuck in the past, you need to heal by focusing your thoughts on the things that are present and forgetting the former things. And you need to seal the cracks. You know what? Sometimes, it's like when you're painting, for some of you who do scaffolding or builders, sometimes, you can build something that can look really nice, but it's just that one crack that you never know what's going to get through it, and it just ruins the entire thing. So you need to let your wounds heal. So you need to know when to cover or to expose past wounds. So in terms of healing from the past, you need to check your heart and who you're venting to. Sometimes, you get people, you could say one thing, I don't know, it could be a month or years out of anger, again, emotional reasoning, which is okay. But you need to be careful who you're venting to, because oftentimes when people remind you, it's like, oh, but I thought you said this and this last week or last year. You don't want people who keep reminding you of former vomit, because you're trying to seal the cracks and you're trying to cover your wounds. It's still there, but we're not going to keep picking at it. We're going to seal that. And it all starts, a process or a step to this is forgiveness. Now, this is a process. I'm not going to say, some people, I don't know if somebody murdered somebody close to you, how much somebody abused you, and it's as if how they treated you is as if it was so inhumane that most people say, oh, I can never forgive that. But harboring unforgiveness and resentment, it is such a heavy baggage, and you know what? It hurts you. And one thing I like to think about in this COVID-19, when lots of people were dying, I just think, is that the way you really want to go? Like, I just think, is it worth it? So it starts with the step of forgiveness, and we do this for yourself so that you can heal from your past heart. I'm not going to say you're going to wake up one morning and say, I forgive them, I feel totally healed, I feel totally okay. It can happen, but it takes time, it takes progress, and the grace of God. And you need to pick up and carry your cross. You need to pick up, those little habits. You need to sometimes just, in the need of a clap back, just to sit back and really reflect on your words and say, you know what, I'm evolving to a better person. That does not need a response. I don't need to put on a face mask. I'm upset right now, or I'm happy right now, or I'm entitled to experience and feel the way I'm feeling. Because oftentimes when you keep masking emotions, it's like you keep building up a guard, that people have to knock and work really hard to knock it down, which is okay to protect yourself, but sometimes it's okay not to be okay. And lastly, identify a happy place that you have for yourself. This could be a safe place. This could be your haven, like a place where in your mind, when it comes to healing from your past, this is practical. You can, in your room, you could decorate it and arrange it to how you want it to be. Like in the lockdown during the pandemic, some people got really creative, and you could create a beach theme, a restaurant theme. It could just be a happy place, a safe haven that you go whenever you feel certain triggers start popping up, whenever you feel overwhelmed with the circumstances of life. And as well as retrogression. This could be retrogressing in psychodynamic approach. This could be retrogressing to a particular time or past life event that you felt safe. Most people tend to retrograde back to their childhood. Maybe they had a wonderful childhood. Maybe that was their safe place, that was their haven. And as well as practice mindfulness. Be in the present moment. Focus on what is happening now. And it all takes training your mind to be mindful. Mindful in conversations, mindful in your actions and what you do. You can find a template and a website that has the resources that could help you on how to practice mindfulness. Acceptance of present reality. When you need to heal from the past, you need to accept the past for what it is, because you have no power to change that, and focus on the reality of now. You have the power to change your emotions now. You have the power to change your mood and possibly even your future, and what happens from this particular present time that you're listening to this message to what will happen tomorrow, to what will happen next week, to what will happen to the next 5 years of your life by God's grace. So take control of your future. And as well as classic conditioning, what have you associated with certain events, with or to in your past? What have you associated? Have you associated, for example, I'll give you an example. When often in experiencing in a horrific or horrendous abuse, especially in relationships, you could tend to have a stereotypical approach, or you're associating, for example, like a male or with certain characteristics to say like, oh, they could, possibly treat you the same way that the last person treat you, or you could associate, failing an exam or something with utter and complete failure. So I want you to, again, you can download a template from the website and write down what have you associated certain events, certain people, or certain things with. Is it something good or is it something positive? That, as we all know, classical conditioning from Pavlov, with the dog and with the bell. So each time, you see certain red flags, a bell rings in your mind and you associate that, it's like the nostrils, your nostrils, like you're sensing, you're smelling like, oh, that this is not something good, like you're smelling nonsense. So what is that little bell that rings in your mind? Each time you either see red flags, each time you observe something, or each time you experience something familiar that happened to your past events. And what was the consequences of this? Because sometimes we can often miss out on good things. So we need to recondition our mind from an educational perspective. I mean, for example, for most people who are in a narcissistic or abusive relationships, you already can spot red flags here and there of a person who displays narcissistic or sociopathic personality. So in your mind, the little bell starts ringing. So how about reconditioning the mind and seeing this from an educational perspective and taking control of the circumstances of life? You could do this by thinking, you know what? Well, yes, this is my past experience. This is what happened in the past. However, now you're looking at things from an educational perspective. Now you're looking at things from a much more experienced perspective. However, this is all down to you when it comes to giving people second chances and classical conditioning. By all means, do listen to your instinct or that gut feeling that people tend to overlook, especially when you have this experience. Sometimes it's good to recondition your mind from an educational perspective or even from a positive perspective. You can download the template, and I want you to write down those certain events, triggers, and what you associated with them, and whether your way of reasoning, whether it had a positive or negative impact based on that association. Over to you now. Thank you very much for listening. You can recap and play this video anytime that you want. Please use the templates available, document, and each time go back to what you wrote down. And I hope to see you make progress. See you in the next bar.